Dr. Austin Gurley. Together we make up the founding team for Apex Pro, actually. So we're excited to bring you guys Lap Timer Plus. Thanks for those of you who have already subscribed. And for those of you that are interested, this is for you. We're going to talk about sector times and what those are, how to utilize them, and also has some kind of best practices and suggestions to help you get the most out of this new feature. So let's take a look at our iPad here. All right, so we're going to start on the home page of the app screen. And for those of you that have not seen this yet, this app upgrade icon, that's where we can purchase Lap Timer Plus.
Yeah, so down here at the bottom in the middle, it'll pull up this kind of page. You can read a little bit about what the features are in Lap Timer Plus, see some screenshots, and if you click either of these buttons, it will send you to the App Store to purchase the app.
Yep, same as purchasing other apps that you guys have either purchased on the App Store or purchased in-app features from. So it should be fairly familiar in that regard. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Let's jump into data and look at some sector times.
Yeah, all right. So I'm going to work with the example session that we include when you download the app for the first time. So this is 13 laps at Barber Motorsports Park. So load this. And when you purchase the Lap Timer Plus package, you'll find that if you move all the way to the right in these views, so I'm clicking that arrow, you want to show that arrow, we just click the arrow to the right to move, right yes, here, all the way to the last page, page number 4. And in the past, you've had some different metrics. Maybe you could plot averages or max and min, different statistics about each lap. So the new thing that'll show up is this pretty colorful view of sector times. So this is the big one. So now sector times, what we're really interested in, we call it sector times. What we're interested in is calculating a theoretical lap. What is the best lap you could have achieved based on breaking your lap into smaller pieces instead of just the entire lap time? Break it into sectors and then look at what was your best time in each sector on any lap and add all of those up to get a theoretical lap, which would be the best lap you could run if you had performed at your best for an entire lap rather than in spots throughout the session. That'll make sense.
Makes sense.
All right, so the display, can you hide this?
Don't know if I can.
Close that.
There we go.
All right, so here you can see from left to right, we have each of our 13 laps, and then on the very end, an entirely green vertical bar, which is our best, actually our theoretical lap. It says best, but this is the theoretical calculation.
Right.
All right, so as you move vertically on each of these bars, your lap time adds up to the time that's at the top of the bar. So if you look at lap number 3, you can see over on the left menu that our lap time was 1:44:01, and it should be exactly the same on each of those bars. So it's as if you're driving in time up each of the bars until the end of the lap.
Gotcha.
The lap has been split into, in this case, 6 sectors of equal distance, and I'll explain how we can modify that in a minute. And we're looking at how much time it took you to complete those sectors on each lap. And marked, kind of scattered throughout here, you can see the different places where we were either on our fastest, which is our shortest time in a sector, the green marks, and our slowest time, the red marks. We're not really doing anything with the red marks except putting them there in case you want to correlate that to traffic or something else that you saw. We're not using that for the theoretical lap. So we take each of these 6 sector times, the green best sector times, and add all of them up to get our theoretical lap time, which in this case, you can see that our best actual lap was 1:43:12, and our theoretical lap is 1:42:08, which is kind of typical that you'll see maybe less than a second if you're consistent, even less than that of an improvement on your theoretical lap versus the actual laps that you're running. You want to say more on that?
Yeah, so if you're less consistent, if we have a variation in lap times, then that is going to obviously create more opportunity for improvement. But if you're running, we can see here all of our laps are within about 2 seconds of each other. And so those sectors, you can see they're kind of scattered actually throughout the session. It's just going to create kind of a tighter window. for that, right? Because I probably didn't vary that much in any of those sectors.
Yeah.
If you have a really populated track, tons of traffic, and you're constantly having to get out of the throttle, maybe you're in a faster car. A lot of times you'll see a larger variation, maybe over a second or more. Also, sometimes theoretical lap's called optimal lap. I know in iRacing, maybe some other things that you've seen before. Optimal lap would be the same as your theoretical.
Nice. All right, so the trick to this is we broke the lap into sectors and we're adding up sector times. So for this metric of theoretical lap to mean anything, it's actually very important that we pick sectors correctly and we pick the right number of them. So in general, just kind of as a thought experiment, you can imagine that every time we break the track into more and more sectors, you can think that during a lap, you could have high performance in a short piece of the track that might be useful. You might have had a good lap, but it might have messed up. There might be some transition corners, things where you have to think about 2 or 3 reactions ahead of where you are, and you might come into a corner very quickly and then burn the exit.
Right.
And so there's all kind of ways where the entire lap time is the metric that we all actually care about in the end, because that's the one that determines how you're able to string all these things together. Oh, so by the way, yep, in the top right corner, there's a little gear icon. This would disappear if you're on any other metric, and it shows up when you go to sector times. So you click the gear and it'll pop up this overlay, which shows you where the sectors, how the sectors are defined on the map. So you have 2 views. You can look at it as a map or as a speed trace. I'll show why that's important in a second. And the default is that we have 6 evenly spaced sectors by distance around the track, and these are the 6. So you can see each of these sliders here is just evenly spaced.
So that's the default, no matter which track you go to. If you open the app, that's what it's coming.
Exactly. Okay. And we're able to redefine these pretty easily. And so first thing to notice is that the slider on the top, I can change the number of sectors. I can go to as few as 2 sectors and as many as 12. And again, the more sectors we have, we would be able to kind of cheat our prediction and not help ourselves any, because we're not telling ourselves something honest about what our performance could have been. So it's very important to match the number of sectors that you allow the calculation to be based on to the number of actual clean sectors that occur on the track. And that's why we include the speed trace. So one of the best ways to split a lap into sectors is to just look at the speed trace and consider the points where you go from one straight, high speed straight, if there are any, or high speed conditions. As soon as you start braking in a high speed area, and then things can happen for 5, 10, 30 seconds, and you get to the next high speed area where you get to high speed and start to brake heavily again. That's a good place to mark a sector, because everything in the middle are places where if we look at any piece of it from any lap, we can cheat ourselves. But if we look at one clean area on the track to the next clean area and take that as a sum and as a complete sector, it's very hard to cheat ourselves and get something inaccurate out of our predicted time.
Gotcha. So defining sectors, it's important to look at where your wide open throttle on the track. So turn 7 is what we're looking at right here. That's after a hard acceleration exiting turn 5. Turn 6 is this little bend right here. And then turn 7, 8, and 9, an area where we probably want our sector to either be right in the braking zone, right where it is right now, or we want it to be down here at the exit of turn 9. We don't want it to be in the middle there, because there is some inherent compromise that happens when we have those transient conditions. So when the car is going left to right and you're not necessarily optimizing every part of the track, you might be really just focused on getting an exit, in this case, out of turn 9. So another good example, Road Atlanta, 10A, 10B, that complex, you wouldn't want to set a sector in between those 2 corners, because you're not trying to optimize 10A, you're really trying to get an exit out of 10B. Any compromise corner situations where you're probably familiar with that term if you've been around this world for a little while. Yeah,
perfect. So it's tempting to have more and more sectors, because of course the predictions look better. But based on that discussion about 7 through 10, it seems like these 2 green sectors should kind of be merged into one. So 6 is probably too many. We should probably knock this down at least to 5, maybe even to 4 sectors. Now I have to come through and realign these quickly, but I'm gonna denote it like this. So that's again just finding peaks on on the speed trace, which breaks us into sectors where all the compromises are grouped together in a bunch. And then there's a place where there's an obvious way to drive, which is wide open throttle at these breakpoints. So on Barber, it looks like 5 sectors. We define them there. And we're going to save them. So we hit save. There's 2 ways that the app is able to save this. If you save it to the session only, that means every time you open this particular session, it will default to using these sectors again. Which in general, you want it to be on the session, but usually once you define the sectors for Barber or whichever track, you want it to use those sectors with any session that you open. So to have it open, anytime you open a Barber session, use these sectors, you would select to save the track. It's best to save both in general, because that's going to it's going to give you what you wanted. And then if you happen to export this session to somebody else, they're going to get the sectors that you defined as well. So if you send a session to a friend and explain your theoretical lap there, they'll be able to open it and see exactly the numbers that you saw and where you marked the sectors.
Exactly.
Does that make sense? So I'm going to select both and save that, and it will close and show us our new prediction. You can see the prediction's not much different. It's 5/100ths higher than our first one, if I remember correctly. The most interesting thing is that the time spent in each sector is very different. So you can see that sector number 4 is a much shorter sector than it was a minute ago. But we were more careful about where we placed them. It wasn't evenly spaced around the track. It was based on features that we saw on the track. So this makes for a pretty accurate prediction.
Yeah. So to kind of summarize from what I understand, you're saying that anytime there's a dramatic moment of wide open throttle to hard braking, that's a good place to define a sector.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then anytime there's connected corners or a kind of a complex of multiple corners, you want that to all be within a sector, not divided up as sectors.
Exactly right. And if you divide it more and more, your time will get better on the prediction, but you're cheating yourself.
Yeah, so the more sectors you have, the faster you can tell your friends your theoretical lap is, but you're not doing yourself any favors.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, that clarified some things for me. I feel really good about this now. I'm pumped to go put this to use. I'm going to be racing in 2 months at Barber, and so I'm going to go change my sectors in my app right now.
All right.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Austin.
Thanks, guys.